one of the key things I think anybody in this room should do, if you've not done yet, is take Ghana's cybersecurity law. It was passed in December 2020. As a member of the opposition in Ghana, I played a key role in that, in trying to ensure that we had proper checks and balances. It was one of the few times you saw government and the opposition sit together to work, because this was a legislation that was passed barely 3 weeks to our general elections. And there was a huge fear that it was going to be used by the government because of how that law is couched. Why I say you should read the law is because what that law does is the first part of that law provides security for the citizens. So it imposes responsibility on the state to protect the citizens. The second part of that legislation then grants powers to the state authority through the Cybersecurity Authority to carry out interceptions of digital packets. So that's basically interception of communication. And it's popular knowledge that Ghana has the technology. The government in which I served in 2016 acquired the infamous Israeli Pegasus system that allows states to do critical interceptions. The next government also went ahead and, thanks to the US and UK governments and Interpol, they supplied the Ghanaian police service with Cellbrite, which also allows it to decrypt encrypted messages, especially used by journalists. And so it's the ability to strike that fine balance, to protect the citizenry and protect the state, especially with the growing rise of terror, but in the same time respecting the rights of citizens to be able to express themselves freely without censorship. And so when you read that law, you will see that it provides the securities for the citizens, but also puts the checks and balances in there. And you make sure that the state, in being able to exercise those powers, don't have a carte blanche. Because at first what government proposed was that they could intercept your communications for 48 hours without court order. One of the things we said was, that's not going to happen. We've designated judges who you can meet any time of the day, midnight, on a Sunday, who would give you a warrant. So without a warrant, you can't do an interception. Not colonel in the military or in the police service. So there's those checks and balances we've put in. And so for me, I think that one of the key things we need to do is strike that balance between the ability to be able to have legislations that protect the citizens, but as well also protect the state. And I think that is one key thing that APNIC is going to do, the African Parliamentarians Network, because what we're doing now is working together with parliamentarians across the African continent to be able to build the toolkits to enable them pass legislations that allow for a free internet and also allow for protected internet use as well. So for me, I think that if your country, and APNIC has about almost 32 countries that have signed up already. We have 54 countries, if I'm not mistaken, 52 countries in Africa. So you should pose on your MPs to subscribe to APNIC so that they can get some resource material that APNIC is building right now to be able to disseminate information and help parliamentarians push legislation in their various parliaments. When we have legislation across the continent that is reflective of a free internet, that's the only time that the internet is truly free. I end with the words of our then President and for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. When Ghana gained its independence, the independence of Ghana was meaningless unless it was linked up to the total liberation of the African continent. In that same way, a free internet in Ghana is meaningless unless it's linked up to the totally free internet on the African continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you talked about APNIC. I think that was a good pitch for any person who's serving in government, which country would be a valuable resource to be part of this, so that you can speak to some of those issues that states and governments grapple with when it comes to people's rights and freedoms. But it's also interesting that you speak about protecting the citizens' rights, even as you navigate the collection of data, which brings me back to the Ministry of Technology and Science for Zambia. Zambia now has a privacy and data protection law as of May 2022, and I think it's one of only 13 countries that have ratified the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection. So I think as a ministry under whom most regulators sit, the regulator for internet access and affordability issues here in Zambia, where do you see governments sitting, particularly the Zambian government, in terms of finding a balance between protecting the privacy and data of citizens who cannot opt out of providing information to government, such as your birth records, your marriage certificates, car ownership, and there's so much data that we give, and so much data that we give also when we're booking flights or when we're traveling. There's just so much data around, and now that we have a privacy and data protection law, where does government sit, especially with businesses, now that you're trying to go on this ambitious digital economic transformation? How do you find that balance of protecting citizens' privacy, citizens' data, so that it's not abused by businesses who are trying to leverage the internet data and information for their business model?
Thank you, Martha, for the question. And I am glad that my fellow panelists also brought out the issue of striking a balance. I believe it's not always such an easy task, especially coming from government, where intention is for the protection of our citizens, but also you want to have an environment that provides access or free access. So we do not want to infringe on citizens' rights, but at the same time we do understand that we have a mandate to protect our citizens. So the introduction of the Data Protection Act that was enacted last year, we are in the process of operationalizing that act. This will be done through the creation of a Data Protection Commission. Now this office or this wing of government, its role will be now to ensure that any data of our citizens that is being utilized is not abused. Obviously, our intention is to know that whatever information is out there is safeguarded. So we are not here to infringe on businesses, but at the same time, we want to ensure that citizens' data is protected. So this process is currently ongoing, and we expect by next year, first quarter itself, we will have this office fully established, and the modalities around the operations of this will also be finalized into next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to open the session up to some questions. If you do have questions, please just raise up your hand. Someone will come with a mic. If you have a particular person you are directing the question to, please do mention that at the beginning. We have a hand just here. Would you like to stand?
Hello, hi everyone, and my name is Athena Morgan. I'm from Kenya. I represent the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I'd like to appreciate our panelists for that presentation, and my question goes to any of them since they all deal with internet freedom, and I'd ask, what are the key steps that we are taking to ensure that even as we champion for freedom on the online platforms, the children are not overexposed to content that may be damaging to them? Also, there is the issue of trafficking and abuse of children on the online platforms. What specific measures are the government taking and organizations such as CIPESA to to ensure that as we open up the internet, we're also protecting children as they interact on different platforms. Thank you.
Would you like to take that?
Thank you for that question. Before my other panelists come in, we realize the dangers that are online, and nowadays, especially, I don't know about other countries, but Zambia itself, we have young kids that have access to smartphones. So obviously, there's a lot going on, and parents are at work most of the time, so there's very little control sometimes. So how is it that as government we can also come in? We have a child online protection strategy that was launched in 2020. And again, I bring it back to the comment that was raised that we have very good policies, but implementation. So we have been working with various stakeholders, but we still feel there's more that can be done in actualizing what the strategy had brought out, and also the action points that we had intended to undertake. So we are in the process of implementing this child online protection, and we again urge private sector participation to help work with government in achieving the strategy objectives. Thank you.
Honorable George to pitch in.
Thank you very much. One of the key things, and Ghana is also a proud signatory to the Malabo Convention and the Budapest Convention, and one of the key things that we did in ratifying those conventions locally in Ghana was to highlight and reflect in our local laws issues of child protection. Ghana has a child online protection program that's been running under our Ministry of Communications, which is our ICT ministry, since 2010. And so for us, children protection or child protection is a key thing. It's a criminal act in Ghana that can send you to jail for up to 15 years if you engage in child pornography or materials that are set in a sexual nature against kids. We also have legislation that focuses and targets persons who try to do grooming of kids on social media platforms. And so that's one of the key things that our cybersecurity law that we passed in 2020 is focused on. We have a whole section of that law that's dedicated to child protection, child online protection. We work with a number of civil society organizations in Ghana who focus on children protection, like the Child Rights International, which is a local NGO in Ghana that's been in Ghana 20 years, and we do a lot of work with them. But I think that critically, one of the key things that parliaments and governments need to do is pay particular attention to child online protection, because it's a phenomenon that's come to stay, where you're going to have these kids very active on social media. So how do we protect them using data protection laws and punitive action for persons who are engaged in online grooming of children? Unless we begin to target them, and in Ghana the examples of prosecutions of persons who have been targeted by way of intelligence operations, tracking of IP addresses, and being able to identify where these persons are operating from. And so those are things that we need to work collectively and collaboratively on across the continent.
Thank you.
Let me just add that in Uganda, we've just amended our Computer Misuse Act, and one good thing around it is protection of children online, or their data to be secured and not to be misused without the permission of the parents. But again, the other side of the coin is that many of these digital platforms have some inbuilt protection, and the responsibility, the primary responsibility should go back to the parents. If you have digital television and you have not initiated parents' lock, there is something there. If you are on, let me say, Gmail, they will not allow you to open an email and leave it to the child if the child is less than 13 years old, and so many other examples. So you let your child have a smartphone and you don't know how or what is using it for, I think that's also a responsibility that we can take as responsible citizens of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Indeed, the internet does bring many benefits for children, but at the same time, many risks as well. So I think for those who are in this room who are aware of the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Children, I think it would do you some good to maybe address some of the protection challenges that are faced by children online, but also centering that they should be free from discrimination and that the policies built around that should be in the interest of the children. I'll take some more questions before we close. We only have a few minutes. There's a hand over there. Would you like to stand?
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Frank. I'm from Uganda, and I've been an Open Internet for Democracy leader. I have a question for Dr. Abdul. I recently did a research on the impact of internet shutdown on refugees and host communities in Uganda, and one of the key findings was the level of implementation of laws and policies in Uganda to curb internet shutdown is something that is affecting the country's progress towards the area of advancing digital rights. So what would you think would be a key strategy to ensure that even when we have all these laws and policies, we've done the community awareness, we've done all the things that are possible, what do you think would be the best way to handle or to bring the policymakers on board, or even the policymakers, to ensure that the gaps that we get addressed, but also the laws and policies are implemented the right way? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you know, I'm Ugandan, and I should rightfully say that the internet space, or the space on the internet, is really fast shrinking in Uganda. It started with the taxation of over-the-top services. Then we had a lot of shutdown on various internet platforms. But I think the solution to this is continuous engagement. Since CIPESA is in Uganda, we shall have to devise ways of continuing to engage with the government and impress upon them the benefits and the importance of the internet and all the platforms they are in, because we cannot afford to retrogress when others are progressing. So we need to do this and ensure that all the laws pertaining to the internet, all the good laws, because we also have bad laws, all the good laws and policies pertaining to the internet and the cyber world are implemented, and we ensure that the gaps that still exist can be removed. So I believe in continuous engagement, so we really need to continue engaging government on some of these issues. Thankfully, we have a Ministry of ICT and National Guidance in Uganda, and unless they close their doors to civil society, we should really continue knocking on their doors to ensure that we get solutions to some of the issues that are still itching. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take one more question. Let's come here and then I'll come to you. Would you like to stand?
Good morning, everyone. Dr. John Davula from Murang'a University in Kenya. Thank you for the deliberations this morning. Now, my concern is that disability and poverty are related, and that's from research, and that poverty and access to the internet are also related. Now, in Africa, we have around 60 to 80 million people with disabilities, and COVID-19 showed us that access to the internet is no longer a luxury. It's a requirement for everyone. So what are some of the policies that we have in place so that we ensure we're not leaving anyone behind? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the other questions so that if any of the other panelists can just address each of the questions that are coming, please feel free. You can stand.
Thank you so much. Moses Chiwamba from SAFIDS. My question is being directed to Madam Sylvia Malenga. Just would like to find out, is the Ministry of Technology and Science having any form of help? We're coming from a COVID era where we saw that information and access to health services was very hard for young people to access. Do we have any systems in place that will come out where we'll see young people being able to access quality information from government-controlled systems? We've seen that civil society is playing a big role in making sure that young people are able to have access to information or health information and also access services. Thank you.
But would you like to stand?
Thank you. My name is Selina from Senegal. My question is around politics and digital sovereignty. I think like we face a lot of issues with foreign platform. I think like Uganda have the issues, Nigeria have the issues with people with, for example, Twitter have issues with President Buhari. And I think we have the parliament here of Ghana. So what are the different kind of measures or what are the different kind of policy that might be emerged for this kind of issues? And I think it's going to be more and more because politics is now on social media and digital technology. So this is the question. So the digital sovereignty and how do we face democracy issues on digital media based on the different platforms coming from the foreigners. Thank you.
Hello? Digital sovereignty and democracy and elections. Please take note of that. Would you like to stand?
Thank you. So my name is Lukonga Lindunda, Member of Parliament from Tanzania and Chair of the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance. Okay, so I've been told I need to look the other side. Anyway, my name is Lukonga Lindunda. I'm a Member of Parliament from Tanzania and Chairperson of the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance. And I would like to salute our Secretary, Honorable Sam George, for a very good presentation. My question is to the African Union Commissioner for Digital Rights and Freedom of Expression. I would like to understand what is African Union doing in the sense of strengthening the responsibility of the social media platforms, especially making sure that the online space is safe for everyone, particularly children online and women in politics who are online, because I tend to find, unfortunately, it's as if social media platforms benefit from the excessive abuse that happens online. About it. Thank you.
I'll take one last question. Would you like to start?
Je m'excuse, je vais parler en français. Ma question va s'adresser à la commissaire de l'Union africaine. Je suis Nadine Kampire et je suis de la RDC. Et je viens d'un pays où l'accès à l'Internet est encore trop bas vu le prix élevé de la connexion, mais aussi des unités. Je crois que c'est parmi les pays où l'accès au numérique est encore trop bas. Alors j'aimerais savoir si il y a des recommandations adressées aux États pour garantir l'accès à l'Internet à tous les pays membres. Merci.
We have to talk to each and every country's government to try to ensure that access to the internet is well respected. Thank you.
Thank you. I will take one last question, but it will be interpreted through sign language and we'll direct it to the panelists. Would you like to stand?
Okay, you'll be using this way.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zambia. I'm a third-year student at the University of Zambia, and I am deaf. First of all, I want to thank the organizers and of this conference for being inclusive by engaging or hiring sign language interpreters. And I've also noticed one of the panelists is also a person, is my fellow person with a disability. I just want to take this opportunity to urge everyone to be more inclusive to deaf people. That when we talk about inclusivity, usually deaf people are left behind, are left out. So I just want to urge all of you here that whenever you have engagement like this, you deliberately invite the deaf. For example, I'm not seeing any other deaf person who was invited to this conference. Even I myself was not invited. I just got wind of this conference and I came. So if I didn't get wind of this conference, then there would be any deaf person in the audience. So I just want to urge all of us here that we are talking about inclusivity. We should deliberately extend an invitation to the deaf also to participate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Would you like to respond to all the questions?
Sound. Okay. We had a technical issue here, but thank you very much, moderator. I want to answer that question that touches disability and poverty. Yes, we have a number of laws and policies that we can look at. The first one is that protocol that was passed by the African Union, I think in 2018, which was an addendum to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. It was specifically for people with disabilities. There should be an article within there in that protocol that can guarantee access to the internet and access to information. You can also talk about the Marrakesh Treaty, which guarantees access to copyrighted information to people with print disabilities. And we can talk about the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Article 2, which defines access to information and including digital information. Article 9, Article 21, freedom of access to information, and Article 32. Those are very, very important. So you first of all would urge or advocate for the ratification of that convention in your country. I think Kenya has ratified this because we even had a Kenyan on the committee of experts on that committee. So those are some of the most important laws that would guarantee access to the to information, especially digital information. In countries, different countries, we have attempted to have laws and policies on digital information for persons with abilities. The one in Uganda is still in draft form. Others, like in Zambia, they have amended their law to include sections to do with disability. The same goes with South Africa. So it's a question of advocacy, advocating for ways and means of ensuring that people with disabilities, although poor, they can still access this very important innovation called the internet and make use of it. By the way, for us people with disabilities, we say technology makes life easy for the people, but technology makes life possible for people with disabilities. Thank you very much.
I will address the question from my brother from Senegal on digital sovereignty and political communication and all of that. It's important that we, as an African continent, come together. And I think that the AU Special Rapporteur may also have to say something about that. I was having that conversation with her before we came on stage that the big data companies, be it Alphabet or Meta, no African country on its own can stand up to them and get them to do what we need to be done. We can only get them to respond to our needs if Africa unites and if we have a collective position from the African Union. Because you look at some of these countries and the net worth of the country is literally the GDP of a whole African bloc. And so how then can you fight them? They have community standards that are not reflective of the African community. And if you look at the European Union, for example, the EU as a bloc came together, not as individual countries, came together to form the GDPR, which is what has brought all of these data companies or big tech companies to comply with the European law. The African Union was beginning to look at the decision along those rules or along those routes, because I don't even think ECOWAS has what it takes to compel Meta or Alphabet, for example. But I believe that if African countries come together and take that position and say that, look, collectively, we're going to take action. You may say that President Buhari's actions in Nigeria against Twitter were a censorship of access, but it got Twitter to respond to the needs of the Nigerian state, whatever those needs were. You can then imagine if the whole of Africa decided and said, we're going to block Twitter, we're going to block Facebook, and all of their platforms, Meta and Alphabet, unless they came and sat with the AU Commission and agreed on setting protocols. They need Africa. We live in that misnomer where we think that we need them. Big tech needs Africa because they mine billions of dollars of data from Africa. Unless we take our rightful position as Africans and say, this is our position, come to the table, let's build that platform, we'll never have this. And I'll give you one typical example. When I served in government, we had challenges with Facebook at the time. We needed Facebook to take action against certain accounts when it comes to political communication, whether it's disinformation and misinformation, especially getting into elections. We needed Facebook to act. Facebook said to us that we needed to get a lawyer in the United States to file an action in a US court. And this was the government of Ghana. I mean, why should a company be able to tell that? But thanks to a project which is under the Budapest Convention, the GLACI Plus project, African countries have been able to designate persons we call focal points. And this GLACI Plus focal point are persons with big tech. And so in Ghana today, when we need to take action using Facebook, Meta, or any of the subsidiary groups,
So I just want to urge all of us here.
using the focal points, we can a 24-hour cycle, we're able to get resolution to it. So it's possible if we all come together and harness our powers. And so, again, my appeal to you will be to get your parliaments to subscribe to APNIG so that they can get available resources to help them pass the requisite legislation. Because if you don't have the legislation and you don't use parliaments to push the government, because parliaments have oversight over the executive, to take these actions, we'll continue to get exploited by big tech. And don't get it twisted, big tech is not interested in our welfare or the welfare of the African citizen. The bottom line for them is profit. We have a responsibility as parliamentarians to ensure the safety of our citizens online from disinformation and misinformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I think there are a few questions for the African Commission. Actually, the African Commission has a protocol on the rights of people with disabilities. It needs 15 ratifications, but up to now, only 3 AU states have ratified. So I'd urge all African states to ratify that protocol. It guarantees the rights of people with disabilities. And once it's ratified, it has to come into the local laws. So this is what it takes to guarantee the rights of people with disabilities. As regards the data and tech companies, there has to be checks and balances. And the African Commission is aware that there is a gap in the law, and also that we have to get these companies to buy in the ethical issues that they will have to abide with. So one of the things that is predominant in our agenda, and we will be working on that. As regards the question about whether we are aware of the responsibility of the internet as regards women in politics, of course we are aware of that, and we will be working on having something on how to protect women, vulnerable people, children, as regards the internet. Finally, there was a question from RDC on the access to the internet. We have a declaration that says that everyone should have free access to the internet. But these are mere declarations that the EU can issue. It is for the state parties to then adhere and put these into practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll reiterate one point I had mentioned earlier, just as an overall response to some of the questions and concerns that have been raised. I think the posture needs to change when governments are coming up with policy. In that, the world has changed now. It is no longer about sitting in one room and saying this is how we want things and hoping that everyone falls in line. But there must be progressive engagements with other stakeholders, particularly private sector, so that these policies actually come to pass. Even when you're talking about access to internet or making sure that everyone has access to devices and internet, what happens in the marketplace is, we don't want governments to simply provide free internet because it kills other businesses as well. So we want to be able to sit on the same table and talk about how we make it work for all the stakeholders. And I think that should always be the posture. It's not that one person must win, but how do we make sure everyone wins? And I think that's the kind of steps that we need to take in order for all our concerns to be addressed, both from a private sector and also, as citizens. But the whole concept of engaging and constantly engaging, listening and bargaining is something we must get used to. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for all the questions that have been posed. I'll speak to first of all, a little on the question on policies in place so that we are not leaving anyone behind. As a Ministry of Technology and Science, one of the key documents that we're currently working on is the ICT policy. Those that are familiar with the ICT sector in Zambia, you will know that the policy that we've had is the 2006 ICT policy. Obviously, the landscape in the sector has changed, and we have been undertaking a review of this policy, and we should have a final document before the end of the year. Now, this policy we are putting in place addresses quite a number of issues that ensure that we are not leaving anyone behind, and it has spoken into issues of access to services, affordable devices, including devices for persons with disabilities. And one other document that is currently in process is the Persons with Disabilities Strategy. We have a concept note in place, which we will be now taking to stakeholders for further engagement so that we can be guided on how this strategy should be developed. Also, we are looking at developing a ICT strategy. So this is in our efforts to ensure that all citizens are covered. We are not leaving any behind. And in line with policy also is the development of the digital transformation strategy, which has addressed quite a number of issues dealing with accessibility. Then on the question on partnerships with other ministries, obviously ICT cuts across various sectors, so we understand the so working with other ministries and also the private sector. For example, my colleague here, the Startup Act. Now this one we're working in collaboration with the Ministry of Small and Medium. We realize that the ICT sector is pushing innovation. So working with this ministry, we want to partner and also come up with this Startup Act that will support our young innovators. And we've also noted how the fintech has spared the development of digital strategy in Zambia. So also working with the Ministry of Finance, how can we harmonize policies so that the apps that are being developed in this space, the platforms that they're using are in tandem. Other partnerships, we have partnerships with Ministry of Community Development when it comes to issues to do with child online protection. And also Ministry of Education, we have counselors that are being trained in various schools and colleges. So there is quite a lot that is going around within the ministry. But the key point is that we're not working in silo. And I believe from the onset when the ministry was created, one of the instructions that the minister had given was that there should not be any ministry that is operating in silos when it comes to building our digital space. And obviously it's not for the glory of one ministry, but it's for the whole country. So this one is important to us. And also working with private sector and collaborating partners. We want to encourage these partnerships so that the ministry can achieve its objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for them. So in closing, I think I would really like to appreciate that as CIPESA, we're always happy when government ministries and government institutions that are open and keen to have engagements and collaborations and partnerships and exchange platforms such as this one. It's always exciting when you have an open door policy to be able to hear the diversity of conversations going on. So we really do appreciate you coming on board. We also appreciate the the AU also for being very instrumental in just making sure that the continent has a direction to go in terms of direction of the digital rights space. Of course, private sector, young innovation, Bongo Hive, I think it's very important for private sector where you are and other players to also just key in, and where there are challenges in terms of implementations. As we've heard, there's good policy, but there's implementation challenges. I think those are opportunities for collaboration to see where is it not working, how do we step in either to build capacity or exchange ideas on how things can work better. So in closing the session, I'll give each one of you to leave us with 3 words. It could either be a sentence, 1 word that you want us to go home or in other sessions thinking about as your last word. I will start with Dr. Busuulwa and then end with the Minister, the Ministry of Technology and Science. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I took that statement from my deaf colleague very, very seriously. When we talk inclusion, we should act inclusion. We should be as inclusive as possible. One thing is that technology for people with disabilities is very expensive, and it is only when government steps in to help the situation shall we have people with disabilities enjoying the fruits of the digital world. Thank you very much.
I believe that we've had a very fruitful conversation, and for me, the most important thing from here is the fact that Africa must come together for us to take a position that the internet must remain free, but not just free, it must be accessible and protected. Because it's one thing to give our people freedom, but make sure that they are also protected online whilst they exercise that freedom. And that freedom must not come at a premium price. It must come at an affordable price for all I was going to say all Ghanaians, all Africans. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the one word that would come out today for me is collaboration. The EU can come up with declarations and principles, but we need the collaboration of civil society organizations, academia, as well as all the various ministries and state parties. We need the collaboration of one and all to be able to achieve the Africa we want. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first word for me is representation. I believe there are many platforms that are appropriate, but it's always important to make sure that everyone is represented in the room. The next one is partnerships, just making sure that we have an approach that is inclusive and involves as many players as possible, and also that in our approach, we should always have an ecosystem approach, making sure that we are addressing problems that will make the whole ecosystem much more balanced. Thank you.
Thank you. And for me, as we continue our deliberations, one phrase I would like, and this I'm borrowing from our minister, that we should keep in mind, ultimately it's citizen happiness. In all we're planning or deliberating, it's for the good of the citizens, not just in Zambia, but beyond our borders and the entire Africa. Thank you.
A round of applause as our panelists leave the stage and return to their seats. Thank you so much. I think we can do better than that, really. As they're taking their seats, I'd like to mention that if you are not connected to Wi-Fi, please just click on Radisson and just click on where it says select. Immediately you will be connected to Wi-Fi. I would also like to say COVID restrictions were lifted in Zambia, but masks and rapid COVID tests are available. So if you would like to make use of that, please feel free to come through. And then also at the end of this first day of our session, we do have a cocktail that is being co-hosted by CIPESA and Access Now. So hopefully after all the conversations and all the networking, you will be able to join us for the cocktail later on. Now, I would like to do something right now before we break out into the parallel sessions. I welcomed all of you who flew in from so many different parts of the world, and you're safely in Zambia, and hopefully we'll keep you here, and then you'll just be visiting wherever you're coming from, but resident here. I would like to welcome specifically somebody who did something phenomenal on the preparations to FIFAfrica. So I would like to ask if Andrew Gole is in the room. I would like for you to stand. Can somebody find Andrew Gole for me? Okay, so someone is going to call Andrew Gole. As he's coming, I would like for you to know that Andrew biked from Uganda to Zambia. He biked from Uganda, biked into Rwanda, biked into Tanzania, biked into Malawi, and arrived in Zambia. So he's been on a motorbike doing a digital security training along the way from Uganda to Zambia on a bike. And in each country that he arrived in, he had a community of bikers that would receive him and hand him over to the next border. And that continued the engagement on digital security, on the Forum on Internet Freedom in Africa. That interaction continued until he got to the Zambian border and eventually made it into Lusaka. So can you imagine taking a road trip from Uganda to Zambia simply because this is an important issue? Digital security, digital rights, the internet being free, being affordable, being accessible is an important thing. So I'd like all of us to stand and just give Andrew a round of applause for biking all the way from Uganda to Zambia. So you're welcome to Zambia, and we appreciate the work that you have done along the way, informing people about the importance of digital security. And so I'd like for you to just tell us how many miles did you cover from Uganda coming to Zambia, and what was the most fun thing, or what was the most outstanding thing that happened on your roads to FIFAfrica using the bikes and our road network system?
Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Gole Andrew. I'm from Kampala, Uganda. I did this ride to FIFAfrica, and during the ride, I actually covered 3,300 kilometers over 8 days. Now, in terms of my experience of this ride, Africa is a beautiful continent. And that's something you only notice when you use a bike. When you're in a vehicle, sometimes you don't experience the environment. But on a bike, you can stop in different towns, different villages, and you just experience nature. During my trip, I ate almost all the local food in all the regions. I have nice meals. Also, I interacted with different communities, saw how they do things. I saw how our roads are networked. Imagine riding from Kampala to Lusaka on tarmac roads. So that's something which is amazing. Otherwise, thank you so much.
So I think this is just one way to show that innovation and talking about digital security and digital rights, it doesn't have to be in a room, right? We don't have to convene and have so many serious PowerPoint presentations. I think there's a call for innovation in how we transmit and relay the information and the issues that we think are key to this sector. Parallel sessions. So I will give you a roundup of what will be happening in which room, and then you can decide which room you would like to go to. We have a number of people on the exits who will be able to direct you to where the rooms are. So in our next session here in the big dome, for those who would like to remain in here, we have a session on resistance and connection, resistance and connection, an African feminist perspective for decolonizing the internet. Okay, so that session will be in this room, and the panelists include feminists and digital curators working on issues of knowledge, justice, inclusive technology in Africa, and they will discuss that from a feminist perspective. So if you would like to attend that session, please stay in the dome. This session will be moderated by Rosebel Kagumire, an amazing feminist from Uganda. So for those who are interested in that conversation, stay here. And then in meeting room 2, we have mainstreaming human rights in cybercrime law and policy making. So if you would like to attend that session, please proceed to meeting room 2. Some of the panelists will include Mr. Vusimizi Sifile, the Executive Director of Panos Institute Southern Africa, Mr. Sare Nope, Ms. Sare Nope, Electoral Assistance Analyst for UNDP, Gilbert Sendungwa, the Head of Secretariat, Africa Freedom of Information Center, AFIC, and George Lugalambi, the Executive Director for African Center for Media Excellence. So that is room 2 if you would like to attend that session. In meeting room 1, we will have a session on building resilient access to information legislation in the digital age. Okay, so that will feature Mr. Richard Mulonga, the CEO of the Bloggers of Zambia, Asimwe John, who is the Engagement Officer at CIPESA, Onyekachi Chukwu, who is the Africa Freedom of Information Center, AFIC, and then Nompilo Simanje, who is the Legal and ICT Policy Officer for Media Institute of Southern Africa, and then Mr. Daniel Sikazwe, who's PEN Zambia. So building resilient access to information legislation in the digital age is in meeting room number 1. And then in meeting room number 3, we have leveraging pro bono to promote data and digital rights in Africa. And that session, the speakers include the Program Officer for Africa, Thomson Reuters Foundation. And then we also, that's Ms. Jane Nzomo. And then we have Lynette Onyango, who's the Legal Officer and In-House Counsel for the Thomson Reuters Foundation. So if you would like to attend that session, please proceed to meeting room 3, and then we'll break for lunch and come and convene afterwards, and then I'll be able to direct and lead on sessions that will happen in the afternoon. So if that was too fast for you and you did not hear the sessions properly, I will be here, so please feel free to come and have a look at which other sessions are of interest to you and the work that you do, and we'll be able to direct where you are going to go. Thank you. Sorry if, hello? 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 Okay. If you would like to have a copy of this agenda, please go to the CIPESA website and download the agenda so that you can know some of the sessions that will take place. But if you still need some help, I will be here to direct. Thank you.
you.